slow down. I wanna live right now. I'm not worried, thinking about tomorrow. I'm feeling everything I need from you. It's all I believe in. I know you feel it too. Will everything we know be lost and changed for something new? Only time will tell, but I'll be holding you. 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 Open the door so you would know that times like these are here to show. You can do things for me and more. I got your back, just take things slow. Yeah. I'll bring everyone to show that I want your heart and more in my own life. I'll tell everyone there's no stopping us. Can I have you for the rest of my life? Rest of my life. Rest of my life. Open the door so you would know that times like these are here to show. You can do things for me and more. I got your back, just take things slow. Yeah. Wanna take my hand and get close. Understand I know how things flow. Please just take my word and think you know. We stay up all night, bright and know.
Larry. Yes, can you hear me? Great. If the kickables have all been moved, you are. It's not public, so I think you might be in the wrong one. Are you twitching? Hmm.
Cinderella boy, I love you. Kimiko, you be Nikki's. Don't give me good. Could it be a destiny? Honestly, a mystery. Must be you. Cinderella boy. Cinderella boy, I love you. Kimiko, you be Nikki's. Don't give me good. Could it be a destiny? Honestly, a mystery. Must be you. Cinderella, will you be there? Cinderella boy, I love you. Kimiko, you be Nikki's. Don't give me good. Could it be a destiny? Honestly, a mystery. Must be you. Gotta be you. Must be you. Cinderella
I'm intoxicated. I got a legend on the way. I'm falling for you, baby. What can I do to make you stay? The bassline's taking over. We've come too far to turn around.
Ah,
So turn the music louder. And let my feet not touch the ground.
okay. Now let's see. Okay, can you hear me now? I hadn't set my mic in my program. Okay. And we'll set that aside for now, because we're getting close to start time, so I won't play. I'll shut the music down. I was just commenting that the screen that I have up as a background on Twitch and my other streams, this is the entry hall for the Mystery House on Katha Island. Another one of those scenes that was only ever done in concept art. Let's see, I'm not hearing any birds, so obviously Susan has her microphone muted.
Yes, I do, or I did.
But
when I rewatch things on Twitch, it's like, oh my gosh, I need to mute more.
Too bad the birds don't come with a mute button.
Tiny pieces of Scotch tape, perhaps?
Oh, that would go over well. Okay. Anyway, it's about time to start talking, so if you would please, Susan.
Alrighty. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's Cavern Tour. Thank you very, very much for accommodating us and showing up early. We wanted to make sure we did not want to interfere with today's All Guilds meeting, which begins today at 13:30 key time. Today we will be continuing our tour of Agura, which is a huge age. I hope you were able to come to the first two tours. With that, is everyone logged into twitchtv.lwf58? Since Agura is a large age, it's important that you know how to rejoin the group in case you get separated from us. What you would do inside Agura is PM the words find Larry to Mirabot. That way you will be instantly linked to Larry, or you can PM find Susan with an apostrophe to Mirabot, and you'll be instantly linked to me. Does anyone have any questions or problems before we start? Alrighty, having no questions, let's go ahead and PM the word link to Mirabot.
Okay, and I need to bring my game screen back.
We've only got one straggler here, so Larry, why don't you go ahead and while I herd this one last cat.
Okay, I'll be with you in just a moment, everyone. I'm bringing up the notes for our first destination here. Okay, first place that we are going is the Canyon Mall. Hang on just a sec, I need to answer a question. Answering Malum. It's just one of those years. And the fact that I commented last week didn't mean it all happened last week. As a matter of fact, the car was an ongoing issue. For those who don't know what we're talking about, my car broke down a while ago, and I'm having issues actually getting it worked on. The person that I normally would have the car worked on by isn't answering his phone at all right now. And a second choice that I had outright refused to work on it. He says he's retiring and doesn't want to do engine work anymore. So I'm still in the process of trying to find a mechanic that'll actually fix the bloomin' thing. Okay, we are now standing outside an area which is called the Canyon Mall although for the most part we do not know what it was used for or what was done here. The Canyon Mall is part of a street here on Agora, which connects Tokata Courtyard to the concert hall foyer. It's half ruined from earthquakes after the fall of Denis. Large portions of the street collapsed along the canyon side. The DRC placed several barricades around these collapsed sections to help prevent accidents. For most of the history of the DRC, the mall was blocked off from explorers. Barriers preventing access to it were not removed until January 4th of 2007. Even then, it wasn't until January 11th that barriers were removed from the path from the mall to the concert hall foyer. There are 5 distinct buildings here along the mall, which are called City Interiors 78, 79, 80, 81, and 82 in the DRC classification system. Of those, the only one open to exploration is the Kadish Gallery, which is City Interior number 80. The buildings are suspected to have been shops of some sort, although there are several other possibilities, one of which may have been the Arch Museum, which was a museum known to be dedicated to the Arch of Kings or the Arch of Kerith. However, instead of any writing identifying the building's purposes, many of them have the same greeting which is found on the Arch of Kerith, the ferry terminal, and the Great Library. The inscription above the doorway is damaged but reads, Rabantano Tenian Shimti. The phrase means the island welcomes you. However, we're pretty certain that it was never intended to be there in the first place, because that we know from speaking with Dr. Watson that greeting was actually originally from the ferry terminal and apparently was copied by DRC technicians and placed in other places simply to fill in missing gaps where writing should have been, but they had no idea what the writing was. We do not know whether the numbering system starts from the left or the right, by the way. The Kadish Gallery. There isn't a lot that I can say about that room that doesn't venture into spoilers, but I can cover some of the basics. The building was purchased by Guildmaster Kadish after his dismissal from the Guild of Writers, and after he wrote The Age of Kadish Tolesa in Denis year 93-95. He opened it as an art exhibit featuring works by both Denis and outside craftsmen. But that was a disguise for its true purpose, which was to house a set of puzzles, or clues to puzzles, in Kadish Tolesa and Annonay. Kadish probably commissioned the art to remind himself of how to solve his puzzles. But another possibility is that we know that Kadish had a rather large ego, and that caused him to hide the clues in plain sight as a way of thumbing his nose at the visitors. Kadish was noted for inviting people to come to the Watcher's Pub, which he had also purchased, to try to solve his great tree puzzle. If we go inside the Kadish, the gallery, I'll show you a couple of things that are interesting.
He's not talking at the moment.
Okay. The first thing that you'll want to notice is that just below the two blue stripes, there is a band of writing all the way around the room along the top edge of the wall. That writing is what lets us know that this place was called the Kadish Gallery, because that's what it says. The writing is literally Retimalach Kadish, but that translates as the Gallery of Kadish, and it says it over and over and over in a continuous circle. If you look up, in case you never have in this room, you'll notice that there's a dome which resembles a night sky. It's not stated anywhere which sky the dome represents, but it may be the sky of Garternay, given Kadish's use of themes related to it in Anone. There is another interesting feature of this room that I noticed, but most people probably wouldn't think of. And that's if we walk back around near the entrance. There is a hidden room of sorts below my feet. Down the stairs, you will see that there is a false wall in this well, which blocks off an area that is below the floor that we're on. If you got in there, you would find a small space completely enclosed, which has the writing that says the Gallery of Kadish down on the floorboards rather than up near the top. The chances are that that room was not intentionally made to be a secret room. Instead, it's just a function of the fact that they wanted to block off that part of the staircase or the balcony. However, in a room so filled with secrets, I've always thought that it was ironic that it had one last to hide. If you ever come here again, by the way, you can use Mirabot, the walk command, in order to get into that space and take a quick look at it. Another interesting thing about this room also relates to the entrance. If you stop and think about it, the entrance is actually, the doorways are actually set at an extreme angle to the rest of the room. That's because once you walk in, the entire building turns sideways. We are located in a long ridge made of stalagmites, and it isn't very wide. So in order to fit this room into the stalagmites, they had to rotate it to the side and build sideways. That always has puzzled me because, of course, we've never been able to see the interiors of the other four buildings that are here along the mall. Where are they? Because we're going to be, we're 2 stories high. So that means we're 1 story down, and on this and the balcony level is on the same level with the rest of the doors of the Canyon Mall. I have to suspect that in order to fit buildings into this stalagmite ridge, they had to do it vertically, and the rooms are probably stacked very much like a stack of cards, where you have one room above and one room below. And I especially think that as you face the doors from the outside, the two buildings off to your left must open up directly into staircases rather than actual rooms. However, that's something I don't know if we'll ever discover the truth of. And that's it for the Canyon Mall. Do we have any questions? No questions?
Well, I have a question. You see that round circle right above us? That's not writing on there, is it? Or is it just a graphic?
It appears to just be a graphic because that's. Well, actually, I take that back. I see one thing that could possibly be the Denis letter R, but the rest of it I can't make any sense of. It doesn't look like Denis writing for the most part. Okay, and since we don't seem to have any other questions, our next stop is the concert hall foyer. By the way, we will be revisiting the gallery when we tour Kadish Tolesa. Okay, and I will be back with you in a moment after I bring up the script. There's pretty much no information to be found about the concert hall, which is on the same peninsula as the Canyon Mall. At one time, I thought it might be one that was mentioned by the DRC notebooks as the Opera House, but that turned out to be a mistake. The Opera House is a building located somewhere to the east of both the island and the city. The only known image of it the only known picture of it shows both the island and the city off in the distance. The Opera House that I'm talking about was part of an area called the Civic District of Cavern, and was completed in Denis year 1650, which would have been 6,007 years before Christ. That was during the reign of a king named Solith. While I have no information about it, I'm guessing that anyone who could afford a ticket could go to the opera, while the concert hall here on the island was restricted simply to the upper classes that normally lived or traveled here. The concert hall was inaccessible for most of the time that the DRC was in the cavern. It wasn't until January 12, 2007, that the path from the Canyon Mall to the concert hall foyer was opened, and the rope bridge spanning the broken section of the Canyon Bridge wasn't installed until January 30th. That rope bridge was intended to be temporary, but the financial collapse of the DRC left it as is. The concert hall is one of the few buildings whose interior has never been shown even in artist sketches. The structure is roughly an isosceles triangle around with a rounded apex and a concave base, which is set in an acute angle of roughly 20 to 30 degrees. So the far end, from where we are now, is actually quite a bit lower than we are. The angle would have been for seating so that everyone could see over the heads of the people ahead of them. There are only two parts of the concert hall visible, the base and the apex. The concave base is where we are now. It forms the foyer and holds a nexus terminal. The foyer is the only part that we can get to. The entrances to the hall itself are blocked off by safety barriers. I can tell you that there are no doors directly behind the barriers. Instead, there's a transverse corridor that would have led to the actual doors, which it would have been on the far left and far rights of the foyer and out of sight of the area that we can see. The shape of the concert hall always kind of reminded me of a spaceship that had crashed in through the rock. I've read about estimates of the interior in which the writer believed there wasn't enough internal room to hold a large audience, but that's something I strongly disagree with. My own estimate of its internal space includes the idea that the upper end of the seating area is located below the foyer. As near as I can guess, it's roughly a volume equal to 4 or 5 of the neighborhood common rooms combined, and could probably have seated 400 or 500 people, perhaps more depending on how the seating arrangements are inside the hall itself, and whether there were boxes or galleries along the side walls. In other words, it's at least equal to a large movie theater. The apex of the triangle is the stage area, which is a multi-story structure jutting out into Agra Canyon. The upper story is the stage proper, and appears to have movable outer walls that can be retracted to expose it to the canyon, or closed to restrict view to those inside the hall itself. One existing sketch of the concert hall's exterior mentions movable panels for gathering light as part of the structure. My guess is that the lower story of the stage area held offices and dressing rooms, and it seems plausible that the hall would have been used for the performance of plays as well as for musical events. There are several Denis plays and operas mentioned in DRC notebooks that were said to be important to the Denis and which were probably performed here. Speaking with Dr. Watson personally, he did tell me that at one point the DRC had vague plans of opening up the concert hall to visitors so that explorers could hold live events here. However, like so many other plans they had, That just never happened because they ran out of time and money. Okay, I don't know if he was able to do so, but Murphak, were you going to show us some external views of the by building platforms? Let me ask him that question in chat.
Does anyone have any questions for Larry about this area? Larry, do you think Cyan ever intended to make the inside of the concert hall accessible?
That's what I just mentioned a moment ago. The answer is yes. They'd when I said I had spoken with, dropping out of character for a moment, when I said I'd spoken with Dr. Watson and he had said that they had intended to, the Watson I'm talking about is the real Richard A.
I'm sorry, I was busy herding cats. I didn't hear that.
Mm.
Malum has a question. Any idea of what the inside would have looked like and when it was scheduled to open? I do know that you mentioned that it was big enough to be like a movie theater.
That's an estimate. The cat. We never have. There never has been any released concept art for it. So we have absolutely no idea at all what it might have looked like inside if it had been completed. Clady is asking what musical instruments did the Denis have, and we don't know the only here we go. The only one that we know for certain is an instrument called a marl obe, which is an instrument sort of like a bassoon, and which was played by Ginn. He had a recording of himself playing it in his 233rd age. However, the recordings that we have, for instance, the music that we just heard in Kadish Gallery was Denis music, and therefore we know that, of course, was a made with Denis musical instruments. So you can guess at either what they are, or what equivalents there might have been from that music.
Celie had a question too, which you might want to address later, depending if we go there. She's wondering what was the point of the concert hall balcony. I think she's referring to the one that's right above the lake.
I had mentioned that as well. That's the apex of the concert hall, and I believe that level was probably offices, dressing rooms, and other cast facilities.
But I don't know if most of you know that it's solid. Do you want to explain why Cyan made that balcony solid?
Have no idea.
I think, didn't the Barrow used to appear there?
No, there was never a Barrow that appeared there.
Oh, okay, but there is a glitch. We can get down there.
There is, yeah. That balcony is solid, so that's a place, for instance, that I had intended to have Murphak take us to once we are on that side. But there used to be a skydiver marker quest that would allow you to jump over to it along the side of the cavern, or the canyon.
Oh, I made a quest for that, by the way.
Ah. This, by the way, of course, is the outside of the foyer. We were just on the other side of the bars there. To supplement this, I'm going to, let's see, show you some still photographs that I have. So if you'll give me a moment, I'm going to hunt those down. Okay, it should be this. Here we go.
Uh-oh, it looks like Mindwalker's stuck inside. Everyone wave at Mindwalker.
Remember, you can get out here by Find Larry. Okay, if you go over and look at the stream window for a moment, I have a picture up which shows a top-down view of the concert hall. And you'll see why I said that I thought it looked a bit like a spaceship. It crashed through a line of rock. The concert hall is in the center of the picture down near the bottom. You can recognize it by the red stripes. And if you also consider that the approximate size of the foyer, you can see why I think it's about the size of a movie theater.
Are you able to hover your mouse over what you're looking at?
I don't know if you can see my mouse in the stream, because I've got it right on top of it right now, and but I doubt that it's showing.
No, it's not. Yeah, I see two reddish-orangish arcs.
Yes.
And where's... Go ahead.
What we're looking at it from the east side, in which would be the direction of the Canyon Mall. So we're looking. Here, I'll adjust the picture a little bit, and you can see the library off in the distance, and the bridge, of course, is next to it.
Okay, so the left red arc is over the concert hall balcony, which is over that river.
Right.
And then
that would be the stage end.
Okay, and then the larger red arc
is where we are now.
Yeah. And then I see the library at the top.
You can also see the fallen section of the library courtyard and the harbor tunnel entrance right next to that.
And where is the thing you identified as a spaceship crashing?
I said the entire concert hall looks like a spaceship crashed right through that line of stalagmites.
Okay.
Just because of the way it's shaped.
All right. Yeah, I can see the roof bridge, but not the bridge itself.
Briggs is asking a completely unrelated question, which I would normally have talked about when we were in Kadesh Talessa, but I'll go ahead and answer it now. Do we know what kind of currency the Denis used? And the answer to that is we don't know its value. We simply know that money was called nariti, or nut, and the basic unit of currency would have been a nari. Uh, we also know that there was the Denis had the equivalent of a cash card, uh, which is to say a kind of smart credit card, which was called pradnarati, or in U.S. terms that translates as rock dollars. And let's go ahead and turn that off. Okay, everyone should have had their photo op, so let's go ahead and teleport back inside, please, Murphac.
I don't know if you can answer this, Larry, but Malin was asking if you know where legal proceedings were held.
No, we do not. Uh, Presumably, there would have been some sort of legal court here on the island, and there's a good chance that it might have been inside the palace somewhere. But given the number of things we do not know about Denis buildings, it could also have been in either Tokata 1 or Tokata 2. Okay, next we want to walk over and out to the concert hall bridge. I had mentioned, of course, that this wooden suspension bridge was added by the DRC fairly late as far as their occupation of the cavern goes. For a long time, there was no way to get across from one side to the other on this bridge. The bridge itself was built as a shortcut from the concert hall to the road that stretches between the Great Library and Sutherland Point. This structure was hit hard by earthquakes after the Denis fled the cavern. The DRC installed this suspension bridge on January 30th of 2007. The original bridge was supported from the top and the bottom by single-span half-arches anchored on a stalagmite on the north side. However, those arches don't reach the entire way across the bridge. The bridge deck was originally covered by a roof for its entire span. And of course, anyone who was here when we were talking about the history of Phil Henderson will know that this was the area where he was captured and then taken away to Corel to be imprisoned by the DRC for a while they tried to talk him into to stop going into dangerous places. This is also one place where you can look over and see a different angle, of course, on the concert hall stage area, the apex. Sutherland Point is the round overlook that's on this side of the palace. It was given that name because that was one of the first places that an explorer ever met Marie Sutherland, who became an important member of the DRC. I believe it was during the second opening of the cavern. And I don't think there's very much else to be said here. Of course.
Oh, I'm sorry. And briefly, who was Marie Sutherland?
She was a member of the DRC and one of the people who gave money to it. I'm not quite sure what her job was, but I think she was as much publicist as anything else. I'd have to look it up to see what precisely what she did, but she wasn't an engineer. In any case, one question that you may come up in your minds, of course, is why did they have a roof over this bridge? And I'm going to answer that when we cross over to the other side. Don't quote me on that one, Susan, because I don't know that for certain. I just seem to recall that she did, but I may be mixing her up with Kate Alexander. And this is why there's a roof over the bridge. We are quite a bit above the lake level here, yet we're standing next to a pond, and there's water flowing all along this street leading to the library. How did this water get up here? And the answer is, it didn't get up here. It came down from above us. It always needs to be remembered that we are about 6 miles underground, and there is water constantly percolating through the rock above us, dripping down stalactites in the ceiling, and landing down here in the cavern. So the water that you see next to us is water that would have come from above. And hence, that's why the Denis often put roofs over things that were out in the open rather than underground. Out in the open being, I mean, within the cavern itself, rather than being tunneled through the rock. The fact of the matter is that they did have rain of sorts. Not very frequent, but they had it. One drop at a time. Next stop is the library. As we run along this walkway, by the way, we are passing by the only middle or lower class residential district on the island, which is on the other side of that line of stalagmites on your right. Or left, I'm sorry. That residential district was installed by one of the kings of Denis when he noticed, after being elected, or I should say after being coronated, that even though there were a few people working on the island who were from lower classes, none of them lived here. And so he asked, "Where are my people?" And his advisors pointed at the crowds that were gathered around them and said, "Here they are." And he said, "No, these are all rich people. Where are the people who aren't rich?" And so he had the residential district, which is at the end, built into the rock at the end of an inlet, installed so that people who worked here could also live here. That particular king, whose name escapes me at the moment, was one of the most popular kings in Denis history because he was very much a man of the people. See, and if I'd had any brains, I'd have remembered to put him in my notes. Anyway, let's go ahead and walk over to the library. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot. The reason why I stopped here is because of this pattern here on this overlook. This is known as the library tree. And you'll see this again a little later today when we visit the Hall of Kings, where a more complete copy, which is undamaged, can be found. It is only there and here that you can find copies of the library tree. And I'll talk more about it when we get to that one.
This may be a little off topic, but does the spiral pattern in the center of this pattern have anything to do with the spiral that's inside the great tree in the Watcher's Pub?
No, that actually is more related to Cage's Path of the Shell. But I'll be talking about the library tree when we get to the Hall of Kings. And I'll explain my theories on it. Let's see. Right now I'm bringing up my notes for the Great Library. Okay. The Great Library is on the northwest end of Agra Island and is the largest common library that we can visit. However, that doesn't mean it's the only one. It's one of many. There are small common libraries in every residential neighborhood, although those do not in any way compare with the private libraries of the rich and powerful. The library on Agra is surrounded by a large plaza called the Library Courtyard, and there's a Nexus terminal located to the left of the library entrance behind a tent set up by the DRC. The origins of this library are unknown. There used to be a theory that it was commissioned by the second king of Denis, Ailesh, and completed in Denis year 233. That idea arose from this passage in the Ailish notebook. Records indicate that Ailish modeled his life very closely to Renaref's. He refused to build himself a palace until a common library was opened, and he strongly supported a place where all citizens could have access to books. Though there was some minor disagreement on minor issues, the building was eventually finished in 233. Although, like his mentor, Ailish still refused to build himself a palace afterward. However, the common library that Ailish commissioned was built in the Denis city, not here on Agora Island. It was intended to display linking books for all of the Denis people to use back before social classes were quite as stratified as they became. Placing it on the privileged classes only Agora Island wouldn't have been a good idea. A library for the common man isn't going to do much good if commoners can't go there. And give me just a moment. And I am going to show you a sketch. Let's see. Okay. If you look at the stream for a moment, I've got a sketch of the Great Library, or the Common Library, that was in the Denis city. This is the one that Ailish actually built. It wasn't about the Denis year 3702. Oh, excuse me. I do have notes about the Common District. It was in 3702 DE that the only residential district for commoners, Shamathin, was built, and commoners who worked in the government were permitted to live on the Agora Island. However, that didn't mean that the upper classes wanted them underfoot, so only the residents of Shamathin were welcome. Sometime after 5473, King Maimin proposed using Stone Eater and Stone Tooth to dig a tunnel from the city to the island to cut down on the need to wait for ferry boats or the need to use private boats. That idea was soundly shut down by the elites, who apparently felt that it would make the island too accessible to lesser mortals. The Common Library in the Denis city was filled with linking books that were basically rejects that were unacceptable for the upper classes. King Kedri, the man who had Shamathin built, visited the Common Library, and this is an excerpt from his notebook. Kedri is the man I was speaking about a moment ago, who was the man of the people. The notebook says, a short while later, after the area of Shamathin began to grow, Kedri was walking through the city conversing with his people and telling them of his plans. And Kedri was led to the Common Library because he wanted to see the ages that he had heard his people talk of. And again the king was disturbed and asked his advisors, "Where are the books that the great Denis have written?" "All around you," they answered, pointing to the rows of books that lined the shelves. "Yet I do not see the ages of our people here. I see ages that resemble failed school assignments for the students of writers. I see ages that not even those students would visit, much less a king. So I will ask again, where are the great ages of Denis?" So we really don't know who built this library, when, or why. We don't even know what was kept in it. The two books found there now, Jalak and Minkata, were placed there by the DRC after they passed Phase 5 approval. It's not known if they were found in this library originally. Ailish was the first king to create a common library, but he wasn't the last. It became fairly typical practice for kings, nobles, and government officials to commission linking books for public distribution in order to gain popularity with the common people. And they built common libraries for them to be kept in. These ages were generally places the Denis liked to go to break up the monotony of living in a cave system, such as the Garden Ages that we have access to right now. And do we have any questions about anything I've talked about up to this point? It would seem not. Okay. The library itself... Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Spatial K asks, there are so few artifacts all over the island. Why? The answer is, the DRC cleaned everything up before they allowed explorers access to it.
Larry, can that big yellow light on the roof be seen from the bay? Or is it only facing this way?
It's facing east, and it's partly there to illuminate the courtyard. It's also a distinctive feature that basically identifies the building from a distance. You can see it from a considerable distance, but the angles are restricted because it's inset. A lot of external lights or light sculptures are there primarily to serve as accent points and kind of identifications or trademarks of various buildings. For instance, if you'll notice in that picture I still have up for the Great Library, or the Common Library on Agra, because I forgot to take it down. It also has a light sculpture on the roof, which is its identification. It looks a bit like a bowl, except that it's made of glass. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Larry. Malum had a question, and I was trying to identify what he was referring to. He's asking what is behind the pillar up here. He's wondering if it's a picture of something.
There's some there are tapestries up there.
Okay, is that what you're referring to, Malum? The tapestries?
Mm-hmm. Those are decorative wall hangings. They look a bit like carpets, except, of course, that they aren't intended to be walked on.
Okay.
Okay, and then the real light sculpture that identifies the common library, of course, is the giant glass ball. The lens on the front of the building, the yellow, that yellow eye-shaped one, is basically just another layer of glass which is kind of focusing the light from that light sculpture. And let's go ahead and show you, if I can find my cursor. Here we go. I'm going to show you what that light sculpture looks like from above.
Cave Woman has an excellent question. What keeps all the power on for all of these lights in the Great Zero?
That's because they are not powered. Okay, if you take a quick look at the stream window, I'm showing you what the light sculpture looks like, or what would look like if you were standing on the edge of the building next to it. And I will show you a different angle on that in a moment. Okay. And here's an overall view where you can see that it's one giant ball. The lens, of course, is in front of it, focusing the light from it. And then you can see that two parts of it go out the sides as well as the back. And on the interior of the building, when we go down to the second floor, you'll see that the bottom of that ball forms a light in the ceiling of the library itself. Now, going back to the question about how light is produced, what you're looking at for the most part are what are called fire marbles. They use fire marbles were the light source that were produced by the Denis, we suspect, in an age called Datamne. And they provided light for pretty much every use the Denis, of course, had any needed it. You see fire marbles, of course, inside of the residential neighborhoods. You can kick them around. Those fire marbles are placed inside of lamp fixtures behind the panels. There would be a whole ton of them up in that light sculpture to produce all the light. The only exception to that are the two sconces that you see on either side of the stairs leading up to the upper story of the library. Those are a luminescent crystal. Sort of like the ones found in the Great Zero and in the second sphere of Annone. We do know that fire marbles do have a lifespan and will eventually go dark, but it takes centuries. So all the ones that would have been installed within a couple of hundred years of the fall of Denis, for the most part, are still producing light. But every once in a while you'll go around and see a dark lamp, and that's because the fire marble inside it has worn out. Okay.
Larry, I hope I'm not interrupting. Malum was wondering if you've ever noticed any Denis text on the front of the library. I think you're going to be pointing out some text on the inside, but
Yes.
Is there any on the front?
Yes, there is, right next to the lens. I don't see it from this angle, but it's the same writing that's found everywhere else on the island. Rabantano Teni and Shemti is what it says. And this is another place where that writing was never intended to be, and we suspect that DRC restoration engineers put it there simply because they didn't know what it originally said and just wanted something that had writing on it. Mike is noting that he says he finds it strange that there are so many cool places that are almost impossible to see under normal conditions. And the answer to that is yes, there are. You can explore this game for years and never see everything that's hidden away in some place where you couldn't get to it normally. In any case, getting back to the library building itself, it's of course a multi-story building. The doors to the upper floors are locked. The first level, below ground, which is probably the main entry level of the library, consists of a room with a central shaft and a stairwell leading down to lower floors, which we'll look at in a moment. There are a total of 5 floors below ground level, if you include the main level, giving a building a total of 7 known stories. The portion here above ground has 2 floors and the canopy roof. It's dominated by the yellow light sculpture. On the rear of the building, there is actually an open doorway high on the side of the building, which opens into the second above ground level. What it's for, I've never been able to figure out, since it drops. There's nothing to stand on once you pass through that door. It just drops straight down to the courtyard. But if we run around the back end of the building, you should be able to see it. If you look up just below the little red arch, which is a kind of overhang, that's the doorway I was talking about, and you can see the light sculpture through it. It's a bit of a trapezoid shape, or not trapezoid. I don't know what that shape would really be called, but it's kind of an A shape. And thank you very much for the light, Murphac. That helps quite a bit. I don't... the last time I remembered, basically the doorway just kind of... That's the bottom of the doorway. It's not... There's not much there to stand on. So, you more or less walk out the doorway, and then next thing you know, that next step has you down here with the rest of us. And let's continue walking around to the side of the building, over near the harbor.
Yeah, it just occurred to me, since there is an actual lighthouse down by the ferry dock, it would make sense that they did not want to make the library too bright from the bay.
I'm not sure it would have made much of a difference. Probably would have been a better idea to go the other way, but this will do. Okay, if we look up at the side of this building, you can see the sides of the light sculpture coming out. But also, you'll notice that there are some stained glass panels on either side of the light sculpture. The one at the rear of the building is geometric designs of some sort. And I've never, if they have any meaning, I've never been able to determine what that is. I'm going to go ahead and see. I should have. No, that's the tapestry. Here we go. Okay, if you look at the stream window, I have a photo up of the stained glass panels, which is a little bit easier to see since I'm on a level with them. And I'll go ahead and make them bigger too. Here we go. So we have the geometric patterns on the window towards the back of the library. And then on the first two towards the front of the library, we have what look like a king and a queen, but we have no idea who they are. Presumably, that would have been the rulers of Denis at the time the library was built. But since we don't know when that is, we haven't the faintest guess as to their identities. Oh, Murphak has taken us up more or less level with the stained glass windows. Okay. Thank you, Murphak. He gets lots of practice, Briggs. This is another one of the effects that I didn't request that he do. He did this on his own and has pretty much knocked my socks off. The closest thing I can think of that this geometric shape looks like would be some sort of a compass rose, perhaps. As I mentioned, Squavi, we simply have no idea who those are. Because if we had an idea of when the library was built, we could make a guess as to who they are, but without that knowledge, it's impossible to say. Next, we're going to want to go inside the building, so after everyone's had a chance to look around and take any photographs, we'll go down there. In the meantime, I'm going to take a brief break.
Yes, Malum, there are some stained glass pictures on the other two sides as well. I don't know if Larry's going to show those to us or not, but I'll go see if Mirfak's platform takes us over there real quick.
Okay, and we're ready to continue, so if you'll take us back down, Murphy. And thank you very much for the nice view. Okay, now we're going to go inside and downstairs. By the way, the upper floors of this are mostly made up of the light sculpture, so while there may have been a couple of rooms inside of it, mostly I think the reason why those doors are there are access so that they can service the light sculpture. And if you look up above the well in the center of the room, you'll see the bottom of the light sculpture that makes up the majority of the upper floors. There's a ring around it which also has the same message found everywhere else on the island, Rabantano Tenian Shemti, which is repeated several times around the circle. So obviously that's another the DRC were here monument. Each of the floors from here down are divided into 5 niches, each of which can hold up to 5 pedestals for linking books. Although here on the main floor, the entrance doors use up one of those niches. Most explorers will see 8 pedestals in the niches of the main floor. The walls and railings that you see around you are decorated with a arrayed hand design identical to those found in the Agra Museum building. This design is known as the hand tree. The first pedestal one reaches when walking clockwise around the room holds a book linking to Minkata, and there's a notebook listing the surveyor's routes which Yisha co-opted for her 4th journey. Minkata was a training ground for the Dini Guild of Surveyors, and the age was used to teach apprentices how to follow a route by dead reckoning and how to navigate by the stars. The second pedestal links to Jalak. A notebook written by the DRC lists several games that can be played there. No one knows what the Dini used it for. It was probably not an arena, as there are no seats on the surrounding walls. There are what appear to be windows piercing the walls in places, but there are no doors into them or any means of access to their tops. Over to my right, on this little, or I should say behind me, on this little table, there are 3 DRC notebooks. And these are filled with events in the lives of a few of the kings of Dini. The first is the story about King Kedri, who made several changes to the city and brought the common people to Agra Island. The second story is about King Me'emen, who was ruling when a serious plague struck Dini. And the third story is about King Ma'erta and his mother's attempt to change the oath of the Guild of Writers, and who released the second Pinto plague on Dini. Now, if we go over here, was Murfak able to remove? I'm heading downstairs right now. For some reason, I had calculated at one point approximately how many linking books this library would have been able to hold. But I don't. For some reason, it isn't. Okay. I had requested that Murfak remove the tarpaulin from downstairs if it was possible, but apparently he was unable to do so. Or if he can, he hasn't done so yet. However, we have, in general, 5 floors of approximately 20 to 25 linking books possible. So, I forget my math, but... Oh, is that staircase solid over there? Oh, he removed the barricades. Okay. So, if you he's talking about the barrier that the game barrier that the barricades represent. If we go click on Mirabot and give him the command walk and then the number 1, that'll get me past that.
Or you can do PM find CT to the bot.
Or find Larry now that I'm on the other side.
By the way, there is a skydiving glitch to get down here.
Be careful though, because and be ready to use your W key to recover if you fall, because these stairs are not solid all the way down. Anyway, let's see, 5 times 25. So we could figure that this library in its heyday would have had on display a minimum of 100 books, possibly many more than that. I am going to attempt to walk down as far as possible, and we will see how far I get. Okay.
This is the end. Do not walk past me, or
Yes.
you'll fall through the age.
Yeah, the next landing down is not solid. So that's... That's your generous host, Larry Fontenot, falling to his doom so you don't have to.
Are you saying you did that on purpose?
Oh yeah, very definitely. I wanted to see just how far down those steps went. By the way, the library courtyard, I forgot to mention, was actually completely intact when the DRC first arrived at Agra Island. It wasn't until 2004, if I remember correctly, that section which fell down into the harbor broke away from the rest of the courtyard. And it's mentioned in the notes on the DRC's website, which can still be gotten to by going to archive.org. That was their website was drcsite.org. Squavi, setting up a platform lower down is something that I've asked him for before, but it is very difficult to do. The most he's ever been able to manage before was to put us down on top of the tarpaulin that separates us from the lower floors. However, everything looks exactly the way that you see it here on the upper floors. So once you've seen this, you've seen the other floors below it.
So refresh my memory. I know you showed us a sketch earlier. Would the very bottom floor would that have a door that opens out into the bay?
No, it does not. I've explored all 5 of the below ground floors, and the one, because of the tarpaulin, the one at the very bottom is almost impossible to see. However, it's just too dark down there. But I was able to determine that there do not seem to be any sort of doors down there. So when you see the upper levels, particularly the one you're standing on, that's what the rest of them all look like, except that, of course, when you get down to the bottom floor, the stairs just stop there and don't continue.
Do we know what the purpose of the tarp is?
Apparently, it's just to block view of the lower floors. Why that was deemed necessary, I couldn't tell you, but there you are.
And Briggs had a question.
No, we don't. Presumably, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. There were plans for a great many more ages than were ever made, and some of them would have gone here. That's what I did when I did my little experiment falling off the end of the stairs. I had set up a private with chat with Mirabot by clicking on his name, and then I had my finger over the W key when I walked past Susan. Okay. Anyway, this is probably about as far down as Murphac is going to be able to take us today. So let's head on all back up to the library courtyard, unless there are some more questions about the library.
Malcolm had asked earlier if there's a significance to the pattern on the library floor, but I'm not sure exactly which pattern he's referring to.
No, the tile. Whoops. Well, that I was not prepared for.
Sorry about that, I distracted you.
Never mind. Murphac set up an on-lake effect, so we fall so far and no farther. Just down to the lake level. Okay, which means that I should be able to... Actually, Murphak, if you can teleport us all back up to the library courtyard, uh, that'll save me trying to figure out how to get up there myself without falling again.
Someone private messaged me and asked me what the W does. If you PM the letter W to Mirabot, you're automatically warped to Mirabot. It's sort of like a Relto, a save, except you link back to the bot. And I just fell.
Okay, if you PMW to the bot, it will take you to the courtyard. Okay, the next place we are going is Sutherland Point. So let's all get trotting.
If anyone has sustained any injuries while falling through the age, I do have a first aid kit in my backpack.
You can now find Larry as a in order to catch up if you're too far behind. This is This, of course, is Sutherland Point, which is, as I mentioned, was the first place that a key photograph of Marie Sutherland was taken in the cavern. We are next to the palace, and this is one of two overlooks. Sutherland Point and the palace overlook, which is off of Tokata Courtyard, are places where Denise citizens could have gathered along with the Canyon Mall in order to hear their king speak to them from the palace balcony. One of the interesting things to be seen here is that on the corner of the palace, which is over there, you'll notice that there is actually a set of windows wrapping around the corner of the palace. What you are seeing there is a hollow wall. It's not very thick, but it is wide enough to have a corridor inside of it. And that the apparently led to these observation windows where you could look out and see the Canyon Mall and Sutherland Point. When the Age of Denis was written and Renaref led his followers there, he was proclaimed the first king of Denis, since that was the form of government they'd known back on Garternay. However, he didn't believe in the trappings that came with the title, and lived in a home that was no better than those of his followers. The second king, Ailesh, who was Renaref's disciple, lived in the same manner, although it's possible that he might have built a slightly more upscale home, one similar to the highest classes of Denis society. Then came the third king, Shomat. He broke with the philosophy of Renaref and demanded all the privileges of being a king. He's the one who had this palace constructed, which he felt was only befitting his station. It was completed in Denis year 347, or 7310 BC. Shomat's palace became the official residence of all of the kings of Denis who followed him. As with surface monarchs, it was not the only residence they might have owned. It was common for upper-class Denis to have residences and vacation homes in other ages. Shomat is infamous for having ordered a garden constructed for his enjoyment, but he grew angry when the architects built a rest area in the cavern similar to, but more elaborate than, the Garden of Lights that are found in residential neighborhoods. He commanded the Guild of Writers to create a garden age with a variety of beautiful plants and natural features instead. The story of Shomat's garden can be found in a notebook on the Tokata rooftop. Yisha copied it and planted that copy in Ederkimo as an example of all the things she supposedly hated about Denis. The palace complex itself is made up of at least 6 different superstructures on a single deep base. This is a style of construction that was also used for Tokata too. It can be supposed that many of the rooms, hallways, and chambers of the palace are underground, which would have made the building much larger than is suggested by the superstructures that we can see. As I mentioned before, the walls around the palace courtyard, which is an area on the inside of the building, are hollow. Murphat, can you take us to the palace courtyard now? Access to the palace courtyard was done by 2 means. One was the large staircase that you can see behind a locked gate down in Tokata Courtyard. The second was halfway up the stairs over this way. I am facing a double door set into the side of the palace wall. On the other side of that doorway, there is a short staircase which leads down to the palace courtyard. Oh, thank you, Murphat. That makes that much easier to see. There are several points of access into the complex. On the eastern side, where Tokata Courtyard is, there's a gate with the flight of steps up, with a short flight of steps behind it leading into a door into one of the superstructures. Next to it is the gate with the long flight of steps leading up to the palace courtyard. And then there's another ungated doorway into another part of the superstructure on Tokata Courtyard. In the palace alcove, which is a short road leading from Tokata Courtyard to the Hall of Kings, there is an archway going over the area, and that has a doorway leading into the upper floors. Yes, it is, Susan. And and there's actually a walkway on top of those arches, which apparently was so that guards could monitor traffic that was passing the palace and going through the Hall of Kings. Oh, by the way, another name for what I call the palace overlook is the King's Lookout. Right now I'm still waiting to see if we're going to get a platform in the palace courtyard so that we can see the inside.
Larry, how is this succession of kings decided?
Usually the previous king would choose who his successor would be. Sometimes it would be a son, sometimes it would be a relative, sometimes it would be somebody completely unrelated. It was whoever that king felt would be the next best successor, for the most part. If a king died in office, then the guilds might choose his successor. Getting back to Sutherland Point for a moment, there are two things that I forgot to mention when we were down there. First off, the obelisk that's down here at the this end of the overlook, you'll notice that there are little signs on it pointing in two directions. Those signs were mounted by the DRC and can be found in various places on the island. They designed those to help explorers find the various buildings on the island. They did not exist in any time. And of course, from the overlook itself, we have a good view of the stage end, or the apex of the concert hall. You'll see three main areas on it. One is a set of support structures or beams down near the bottom for the that help hold everything above it. Then you'll see what look like three pillars, which are have a kind of blue light to them. And that is the balcony that you can stand on if you get there by means of a marker game. Above that is the stage area itself, which had the moving panels, which apparently helped to guide light into the stage.
How's your ear holding up, Larry?
Oh, I'm wincing every once in a while, but I'm not yelping out loud, so that's a good thing. I took a couple aspirin before I started the tour, and I'm going to take a couple more now, just on general principles.
While we're waiting for Mirfak, let's all give him another round of applause for these spectacular special effects that he's doing for us. This is a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm. So, the fact that he's providing us with so much light so that we can see things clearly is something new for this year that I had no idea he could do, so I had never asked for it. Do we have any other... oh, here we go. Okay, this is the staircase that I was talking about that comes from the street through those double doors. So if we head downward... Whoops. Everything is transparent, which it shouldn't be. So, here we go. Now we can see everything. This is the palace courtyard. And as Susan's been mentioning, you can actually explore this freely by going to the open cave shard to the City of Dimensions. They have this entire area solid, and you can walk up and down the main stairs to come up here, as well as up those stairs to the street behind the palace. And it looks like we can go over to the main stairs over there. That looks like it's solid. This area is inside the wall that you saw he's made it quite a bit more solid than I thought he would. So we can actually see quite a bit of this, can't we? I've never been able to show people this interior door before that's on this first landing. This is one of the other ways into the palace. When you link by means of Barrow Stone to the palace, there's one of the three places that you come out is a little area on top of that structure right there. and you're overlooking this one here. And where we are now, you can see that there are actually doorways leading into both of those areas. Now, going back up to the courtyard itself, the little stairway that we came down when we entered the courtyard, which is right over here, may have, I've never been able to determine the truth of it or not, but I've always wondered if there wasn't going to be a door here to get into the walls. One thing, let's see if we can get up here without dying. Yes. And I will... You can find Larry to get up to where I am now. One thing that I always want to point out is that above that doorway, you'll notice that at the top of the wall, there's a building above it. And that building is the only thing that connects to the upper floors of the Hall of Kings. There's no other way that I've ever determined to get up there. So people who wanted to get to the residential districts, who crossed over a natural bridge from the top of the Hall of Kings over to the the upper levels of the island where the residential districts were, probably had to go through this part of the palace to get to the top of the Hall of Kings. That's a guess on my part, but it's the only place I've ever seen. Okay, hold on just a sec. Lawrence is asking a question. Does it... Except
I'll
I
take
can't...
care.
Yeah.
I'll take care of that, Larry.
Okay. But yes, that's the only way that I know of to get to that section, to where you can go over to the upper floor of the Hall of Kings and cross that bridge. Now, let's see. Yes, it is. It's collapsed across the middle. The DRC would have to put another one of their suspension bridges across it for it to be used now. Okay, there's one other area which I hope Murphac can take us up to. Up at the top of this section, there is a very strange building that I've never found an explanation for. Let's see. Okay, let's see if we can do this. This is another area that we've had trouble getting up to in the past, but hopefully he remembers. Anyway, There's a building up there which has four very strange spikes on it. Uh, the only thing that I've ever been able to guess is that perhaps it's some sort of a broadcast room where government officials might have been able to broadcast radio messages to the rest of the cavern. But nothing is written about it whatsoever, so the truth is not something that I can tell you. So we'll give Murphak a moment to see if he can get us up there and to take a look at it. It's actually a pretty interesting building, and there's a little courtyard surrounding it. It's also a good place to get a look at a lot of the rest of the palace. Actually, while I'm waiting, what I can do is go over here and
How many of you here are joining this tour as the first time?
okay, if you look at the stream window, I have a picture that was taken from the palace courtyard, and if you look up at the top of the building I'm facing, you'll see two of the spikes that I was talking about on that building up there. It's actually the front of the very top of the building we're standing in front of at the moment. Let's see, I should have... hopefully... no. Oh, never mind. This is the building I was talking about. So you see we've got a doorway coming up here, and then with a circular roof over it, and those four spikes projecting out at an angle. I would dearly like to know what they were supposed to be.
Well, they just look like a building design to me.
You could be right, but it's such an unusual thing. Why would they have it? And of course, if you can wander around a bit and get views of other parts of the palace a little bit, as long as you don't go too far. Even says those spikes are here to mystify explorers, and well, the game is called Myst, so that makes sense. You don't have to stay within the railings of the balcony itself. He has barriers up to keep you from falling off, so you can wander around, and when it gets dangerous, you just won't go any farther.
This little room is tiny.
Presumably, it's just the head of a staircase. Let's see. We are at. Let's see. 11:30. Oh my goodness, we're starting to run over time. Okay, Murfak, please take us down to the Hall of Kings.
Fortunately, the All Guilds meeting doesn't start till 13:30. They were gracious enough to push back the start time for us.
Right. And the reason why I asked to move us up a half hour was in case I wound up running over for some reason. But I hadn't realized the time had gotten that far away from me. So we have. We'll talk a little bit about the Hall of Kings, and that will be the tour for the day. And I had mentioned, of course, that there was an intact copy of the library tree sculpture in here, or mosaic. But let me go ahead and see. Okay. Close that, and then Hall of Kings. The Hall of Kings, of course, is a large, round, high-ceiling room with 34 memorials set on decorative ribs, one for each of the kings of Denis. The names begin in clockwise order from the door to the palace alcove, starting with Rinaref and ending with Kareth. The upper half of each rib lists the name of king. The lower half has a projection of the rib which holds a notebook with a brief biography supplied by the DRC from their research sources. It is unknown if the projections were originally used for the same purpose or are just a design element. The Hall of Kings is not the only location of the biographical notebooks. Several that should have been here were taken to the Tokata rooftop to be worked on, and there are 3 in the Agora Library. The hall was opened for explorers on January 12th of 2007, allowing access to the areas west of it, such as Sutherland Point, the path to the Great Library, and the southern end of the Concert Hall Bridge. The center of the floor in the Hall of Kings is one of the 2 places where the library tree tile pattern is located. This is a variation of the Great Tree of Possibilities, which forms the base for a number of popular decorative patterns, such as the one going down the Great Stairs here on Agora Island. My own theory of what the library tree is meant to be is based on the idea that the Rone saw themselves as the center and beginning of everything. If I'm correct, then the center point of the spiral in the middle of the design represents their homeworld of Garternay, and the branches and leaves that lead off from the spiral represent ages written by the Rone and Denis. You'll note the ring around the tree. At each of the cardinal points is the outline of an open linking book. The pattern appears to be laid out in quarter sections made up of 10 tiles each, with the 4 tiles that hold the inlaid tree design being massive. A copy of this tile pattern, of course, is near the library. The roof of the hall is a dome with windows circling it. While they're very dirty, if you can get up to them on the outside of the building using a bot, you can look down on the interior of the hall through them. For some reason, however, those windows are not visible from the inside of the hall, and that's an unsolved mystery. The library tree, by the way, this is the second of two designs that were originally drafted for it. Let's see if I can find... Okay, cancel that. I'm going to show you another design that was considered but rejected. Let's see, browse. Okay. This, by the way, is a rendition that I made, but which has the overall look of it. Okay. And let's see this. I hope. Here we go. Okay, that's really big, so I'm going to have to cut down the size. Whoops. That wasn't what I wanted to get. Okay, if you look over at the stream window, this is the original design for the library tree, as interpreted by yours truly. And you'll notice that there is writing on it. That writing is known as the library tree proverb, or the tree proverb. Let's see if I have a copy of that written down someplace. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff I gotta sort through. Okay, no, I don't see that, but I can give me a moment and I'll hunt it up. We don't know exactly what the library tree proverb says, because not all of the words have been translated yet. Although, in other words, we know what the words are, but we don't know how what all the translations are. Let's see. Okay, and then I want to knee proverbs. And nope, that's not the right place. That would be under language. Dictionary. And then, let's see, tree. Here we go. By the way, this design for the library tree was created by an artist named Josh Staub.
Oh, he works for Cyan, doesn't he?
He was a contractor, as far as I know. Anyway, it reads, Reatanor ter kenen te alon rubergeren och ter kenen te neon. And as near as we can tell, it means the beauty of the tree is in its something, but the something of the tree is in its root. And that's about as best as we've ever managed to do as far as translating what that proverb means. In any case, at this point, I think we're just about covered everything. So one last question and answer period if anyone has anything they'd like to know. Any final questions before we close the tour?
I just want to let you all know that Mirfac has built a little platform up here. We're kind of looking down on everyone. If you want to PMW to Mirabat, you can get up here.
Okay. Remember again that in 45 minutes, the All Guilds meeting will be held. Where is that located, Susan?
In Corel, which is
Corel.
available from the city links in the Nexus.
Okay.
Or you can PM to Corel to Mirabat.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming along and being patient as I bumble my way through yet another one. And anything that any other announcements that need to be made? Yes. There will of course be the karaoke show at 1600 key time, I believe it is.
Yes.
In the karaoke hood. What other events are going on today?
We'll have to check my Gomi list. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, story night should be tonight. I don't know if he's going to do the European one today because all the schedules are kind of thrown off when they moved the All Guilds meeting.
Well, it's still in the Gomi list. So yes, our Tearton's story night should begin today at 1400 in Sano's hood, TSAHNO's hood. But of course that would interfere with the All Guilds meetings. So
Yeah.
and then also at 2330 key time tonight, he has another story night.
And that's the U.S. version, or
Yes.
Western version. We'll put it that way.
But he does speak English in both.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we all need to give Larry a huge hand. I disagree that he bumbles through anything. I think he does a fantastic job. And so remind us once again where you save these videos.
Okay, you can find Larry Fontenot on YouTube, and I believe the YouTube one was recording. I'm not sure about Facebook, but my Facebook videos should have a copy of that if that worked out. And then, of course, the recording on Twitch is going to be up for the next 14 days.
And one last thing, could you please type out the link to your wonderful, informative website?
Oh, yeah, that is www.floristica.com/hpotd. Whoops. And I sent that to Mirabot, so he says he doesn't understand me. floristica.com/hpotd. The Lost Library of Denis is at that address. That's my website where you'll find quite a bit of the material I cover.
So this is oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Larry.
Not counting stuff that I might ad-lib.
Well, this is our last tour of Agura. It's a secret where we're going to be touring next month, but the next
Even I don't know yet.
Oh, it's on the schedule I sent you months ago. Gosh, I hope you know where it is. The next tour will be on Saturday, August 8th at 11 o'clock key time. Please meet us in Cavern Tours Hood. Since Cyan was not able to fix the public link to the Hood, I think I've sent you all a private link, a private invitation to the Hood. If you don't have one, please PM me. But if people are in Cavern Tours Hood, it does show as public in the Nexus.
That's as long as somebody's sitting there that it does. It's only when it's nobody's in it that it drops off the Nexus list. So needless to say, when we all leave for the tour, it drops off the list, so that can make it hard for people trying to join us. However, for those, if you're late to a tour, all you need to do is PM link to Mirabot in order to catch up with us.
And I have everyone on my buddies list, so I try to herd cats as best I can.
Yes, you can. This is your first season, but believe me, after 2 or 3 of them, you become an expert cat herder. Okay.
Alrighty, well you're free to stick around in Mirabot City, Mirabot Agura if you want. But we do hope you join us at the All Guilds meeting at 13:30 in Corel.
We've got a little bit of time here before people will need to log out of the game so that they can get rid of the hangover effects. So maybe Murphac will give us some Barrow rides, because there's a number of Barrow paths in the city. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and shut down the stream now, so thank you all, again, thank you all for attending. Bye-bye.